If you had to pick one building over the last 20 years, one building that stood for this time in architecture, that expressed its technology, its aspirations, its effect on cities, that would be the building.
I defy anyone to stand in front of that museum and say it's not one of the most beautiful things they've ever seen.
The greatest moment of Bilbao is when you see it for the first time against the cityscape. You see that this extraordinary, unusual form that in one way looks completely different from anything around it, but in another way really does respond to the nature of that site, to the industrial past of this port and shipping city.
But the museum's riverfront location was never part of the original plan.
They gave me an in-town building that had a 19th century brick wall around it with turrets at the corners. I'm a brave sucker sometimes. I think it's a terrible site for the museum. After dinner, we went up on the hill and they said, well, where would you put it? And I said, there, by the bridge. There was a crumbling brick factory there. By some miracle, I got it.
How do you even manage to point to a place and say, I'd like that, and it happens?
Well, I'd had a few drinks.
With a new site agreed, the building he came up with fused great 20th century leaps forward in both art and engineering. Picasso's Cubist masterpiece, The Accordionist, helped inspire the bravura architectural forms. But these were only made technically possible by Gary's team designing the Guggenheim with pioneering software meant for building aeroplanes.
30 years ago, I was trying to emulate the world of movement. Cars, planes, everything moving. And I couldn't build it. I tried. It was difficult and expensive. And I went to IBM. They connected me with Dassault Systems in France. Dassault build airplanes. I knew this was the future. They gave me the stuff to try. And the first time I found success with it is we used it in Bilbao.
It achieved what Frank had really wanted to do for so long. To create an architecture of feeling, of sculptural expressiveness. It was utterly transformative. I mean, it was totally different from that kind of dark old city that it was sunk into with those emerald green mountains. But it didn't look foreign. I mean, that was the thing. It was like a spaceship that had landed, but it was a friendly spaceship, a neighborly spaceship, one that took note of what was there and just raised it up to a whole new level.
The world swooned. Some 10 million people visited the museum in a decade, with Frank's masterpiece helping generate nearly 1.6 billion euros in tourism for the Basque government.
Good news, it was cheap. The good news is it works, and the good news, people like it. Bilbao was 100 million.
Really?
$300 a square foot.
That's amazing.
I know. So it's the cheapest museum that's been built in the last years, you know.
I think the Guggenheim in Bilbao was a very important moment because it changed a lot of things. Every city wanted a Guggenheim. Finally, cities were represented by architecture, which had been a dead thing for a long time because not since, for example, Sydney. So it empowered the architect, and I think that was very, very critical.
His career was never quite the same after that, and architecture was never quite the same after Bilbao.
Across the globe, a swathe of stunning works elevated Gehry to greatness.